On this episode of The Hollywood Outsider, we are talking about two movies in particular, and that is it. Cruella, the reinvention of a classic Disney villain, and A Quiet Place Part 2, the movie that might have finally officially actually saved movie theaters. Let's get on with the show. My name is Aaron Peterson. Joining me today is my fellow Troy Heinritz.
What's up, everybody?
Now, if you weren't aware, Troy Heinritz is the host of the Blacklist Exposed podcast, a podcast that's devoted to the Blacklist, and he's going to join me on this particular episode to talk about Cruella and A Quiet Place 2. Amanda and John both are on vacation. We normally don't do an episode during Memorial Day week, but this is special because this might have saved movie theaters finally.
The box office is finally back and in full force, and I'm so excited.
It's on fire, man. I mean, the theater was packed. Did you see it in the theater?
I did see it in the theater, but I saw it late on Sunday night, so it wasn't super full, but it was the IMAX auditorium. So, I mean, it seats like, gazillions and gazillions of people, but they're still doing the socially distant spacing. So it felt a little thinner, right? But the edges were not filled, but definitely center. Every aisle in the center was taken up.
Let's be honest. We all want that to continue, right? We all like not having people right next to us. And
just rip out one seat every other, like two seats, rip out a seat, two seats, rip out a seat. I mean, even if you go with a group of four, it's like, I don't need to sit next to Aaron. He smells.
Yeah, it's true. I stopped showering in 1996. What I think is fascinating is how many people don't realize that you can do that until they get to the theater, and then they spend about 14 minutes trying to decide which seats they want.
Oh,
reserve seating.
Buy tickets at the box office? Like, who the hell does that anymore?
Yeah, it's so old school, right? I mean, I get it. Hey, sometimes you just make up your mind to go see a movie right then, but whew. You know what I've done during the pandemic? And
go ahead.
I probably shouldn't tell people this, but because they had that seat where they block a seat all around you, if obviously more than one of us go, my wife goes or my friend goes or something, I always get a seat between us, and then you kind of get an extra seat. So it's like me, empty seat person, and then you get the extra seats around. So it's kind of like, nice little relaxing vibe.
Do you leave the seat up in between you and your wife?
Yeah, no, not when you actually sit down, but it gives you like an extra cushion of people not being near you.
For sure.
See what I'm saying?
Which I totally could have appreciated, because there was a young female 2 rows down to the right, literally like, boop, screen bright, texting people. And I was just like, you gotta be kidding me.
People forgot manners, right? Because people haven't been out in public. They haven't been to a movie theater. Many people haven't been to one in a long time. So the etiquette of, hey, you're not in your house anymore, man, is you got to relearn that, I think.
And then the first time Aaron and I actually saw A Quiet Place 1 together.
That's true. Yep.
And we had I think we were sharing a bucket of popcorn, and we were like one kernel at a time, eating it so quietly. This jackass next to me opens up a freaking bag of red vines, and all you hear is like, I was just like, oh, come on, you got to be kidding me. Shut up, dude. Shut up.
See, this is why I always go to the previews for movies like this. Always go. I have a rule. I don't go Friday night or Saturday night. And the reason why is because that's usually the crowd that cares less about your well-being. If you go to that Thursday premiere or preview, when they come out 6, 7 o'clock at night, the night before it actually releases, almost every time I have no problems. And I had no problems for A Quiet Place Part 2. It was just like when you and I saw the first one. It was very quiet. You could hear a pin drop. It was perfect.
Yeah, that was my original intent, but fortunately, other podcasts got in the way.
Life got in the way.
No, it was good. It was good to be back. I was also without a mask. For those that are interested, by the way, AMC changed the policy that if you are vaccinated, you don't have to wear your mask anymore.
I'm sure everyone's being completely honest about that.
100%. Like the guy behind me who's like,
no, man, I got them shots. Yeah.
The order ahead food service was still going on too, which I thought was great, because if you're a Stubbs member, then you obviously get the convenience fee is waived. So I shouldn't say that I wasn't the guy that ordered my ticket at the box office. I ordered it in parking lot at Fandango.
Still went faster, right?
Still went faster. Still took my seat.
Must go faster. All right, we've got two movies to talk about. One is Cruella, which only I saw, and then the other one is Quiet Place 2. And we'll kind of talk about that one briefly, spoiler-free, and then we'll jump into like a spoiler cast of that. So just hang tight. But first, we're going to do Cruella. But before we get there, remember, you can find all information on The Hollywood Outsider at thehollywoodoutsider.com, including reviews on These films and much, much more, as well as all of our podcasts are available in your podcast feed. So please be sure to subscribe and come back and listen to our regular episodes where we do a bunch of other stuff, including a topic every single week. All right, Cruella, lead us down the path, Troy.
Yes, and it's not that I did not want to see Cruella. It's just that it's available on Disney Plus and theaters simultaneously for that wonderful price of $30. And I just don't believe in paying Disney any more money than I have to because I'm actually going to Disney next week and it was expensive.
How much money do they need?
I know, really?
How much is a ticket? You said you're going to Disney next week. How much is it? One ticket?
One ticket for Disneyland because they have a tiered system. So like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is cheaper than a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Sure. For the one park, not a park hopper, just one park, I think it was $110 per person.
And that's on the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
That's the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I think it goes up to like $140, I think, for the weekend.
Man, you better, I hope Mickey carries you around the park for that kind of money.
Mickey definitely parades around the place, that's for sure.
Did you know the little secret about Disneyland and Disney World? That you'll never see the same character anywhere in the park at the same time? You only see, they make sure that character is only in one place in that whole park at a time.
That way the kids aren't freaked out when they're like, oh my God, there's two?
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't, so they don't kill the magic. It's just a fun little Disney fact that I learned when my son's wife actually worked at Disney World.
They also hire sprinters to be in those costumes. They can run from Main Street all the way back to Toontown in the tunnels underneath. So they actually have multiple people playing them.
That's funny. All right, Cruella.
But Cruella, this is a prequel of sorts. It gives us the origin story of the famous villain from the 101 Dalmatians series. It's played by Emma Stone. And I think it was just a fascinating way to kind of do this concept of going back and looking at some old characters, and especially looking at the villains, especially when we got this with Maleficent, who has had a second movie since the first one came out. So now we're moving into Cruella. And I just have to wonder, Aaron, is this a solo issue? Like, are we getting like stupid things that we didn't really need the answers to? Or was this actually a fun way to get the origin story of this famous villain?
Okay, I have to be very, very clear on this. I wanted nothing to do with this film. I very much in the vein of what you're kind of alluding to, which is, do we really need this? That's how I felt, because we already got, the cartoon 101 Dalmatians. Then we got 2 live action recreations of it. So no part of me thought, oh, well, we need this. We need to go back and find out exactly why she wanted to skin them puppies for them coats. We didn't need that in my world. So I went in kind of almost kicking and screaming, I want to say, because I really didn't see a need for it. But I will pleasantly and kind of loud.
Tail between your legs, would you say? Like a dog?
I see what you did there. Yes. With my tail between my legs, I will have to admit that I was pleasantly both surprised and enamored with the entire film. Like, they completely won me over that this could be done. It works really, really well. I was really surprised how well the story works in making this character relatable. They made me care about Cruella de Vil, and if you saw the cartoon, why would you? She's kind of a horrible person, but it works on all cylinders. They make her, they don't emasculate her. They don't like make her now she's completely relatable. Now she's completely empathetic. It's not like that at all. She's still the seeds of the Cruella de Vil we will eventually see, but they gave it enough story that it's fascinating and interesting to watch. Really well done in terms of the story and the story being told. And I was pleasantly surprised with what I got in terms of story. I don't know how I feel about these villain origin stories. Maleficent, I kind of was either or on. I mean, I liked it. I really adored this. A lot of it has to do with Emma Stone's performance, too. There's a duality there that is just amazing.
Well, there's 2 Emmas in this particular movie, so how do they play off of each other, knowing that they're 2 pretty heavy hitters?
Oh, my God. I mean, it's so wonderful. It really, Emma Thompson plays the Baroness, and you've seen The Devil Wears Prada, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like Emma Thompson's version of Miranda.
Oh.
In that respect. Okay. So, yeah, that's kind of how I would present it. It's very much a much darker, because she's very unempathetic. Like, she basically is Cruella de Vil from the cartoon in many respects. She's just downright selfish, brilliant, a little maniacal, but very Miranda-esque, in terms of very hard to relate to and whatnot. But you kind of get a little understanding of her character as you go. But she's very one note. But because Emma Thompson is the person playing that note, it works beautifully. Emma Thompson is pitch perfect casting. They play off each other extremely well because Emma Stone is both an admirer of the Baroness as well as kind of someone who grows to despise her in many respects, as well as become jealous of her fame and fortune in many respects. It's a really fascinating dynamic, and the fact that Emma Stone throughout the film is she plays two parts because she's playing Estella, who is this lonely orphan with only her two friends, Horace and Jasper, at her side to kind of get her through life. But then she establishes this dynamic persona of Cruella. So she plays two roles basically in the film. She plays this kind of meek, meandering, wannabe fashion designer. And then she plays Cruella, the future of fashion design, the one that's coming to take the Baroness's title, the one who's going to throw it back at her and make her regret every decision she's ever made. And that's the more loud, bold, Cruella-esque character that you're going to see in the movie down the road, the cartoon. So it's fascinating duality, and they play fantastic off each other. Like, they just have a tit for tat that works fantastic. They have a real rapport that is just endlessly fascinating. Like, those two make the movie work for me. Everything they do makes that movie work.
All I heard in that it was Horace and Jasper. So is this the Horace and Jasper we see in the original classic? And are there other ties into that original classic movie?
Yeah, and they give them, because they're kind of, they're boobs in the cartoon, right? They're just
right.
Like, we're idiots. And Horace is kind of an idiot to a degree, but they also give them both a little bit of depth and a little bit of character. So they're not just one-note cartoon characters. They actually have a lot to offer to the story. And Estella / Cruella, especially, they become like her right hands, and you kind of get why they are who they are. Paul Walter Hauser plays Horace, and Joel Fry plays Jasper, in case you didn't know.
And both did fantastic jobs, I'm assuming?
They did good jobs, yeah. Paul Walter Hauser, he's been in Cobra Kai, and he's been in a bunch of things. He's the same guy, and he's the Danny McBride of the movie. He's just playing the character that he plays, but with an English accent. Joel Fry, it brings a little bit of heart to it.
Well, I think the big question is, are there puppies?
There are puppies everywhere. Everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. But they are constantly, as adorable as they are constantly upstaged by two things. The costume design, stunning. I never thought I would care about costume design in my lifetime. I care. I really, really, really do. And it's astonishing. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. Every outfit, every dress, there's so many different looks in the film. Cruella really, really has her own unique signature style, as does the Baroness, even though the Baroness is kind of picking from other people's styles, but Cruella designs her own. Just, the costume design is just magnificent. If it doesn't win the Oscar, I don't know what the hell they're doing. I really don't. The other aspect is the soundtrack. This has probably the best soundtrack I've heard in years. All songs you've heard before, but it's just that the beats are carrying the film. They're almost effectually a score for much of the movie, and it just works seamlessly to create this world, this environment of Cruella de Vil, and carries the movie forward. Like, I was never bored. This movie's 2 hours and 14 minutes, I think, is the time. It's probably 2:05. The rest are credits, but it is never boring. And these days, it takes a lot for me to get to the 2-hour mark without being a little bored. And it was never dull. And a lot of it had to do with the soundtrack was fantastic. The costumes, every time you see one, you're just in awe of what you're seeing. And it's just like, wow. And there is one moment in particular with the costume that I won't spoil. It's kind of in the trailer, but I won't explain that either. But when that moment happens, when you see the full effects of that dress in full bloom, it is hysterical, amazing, and just genius in many respects.
Disney's known for the original songs then, so did we get an original song out of this movie as well?
There's a Cruella song at the end, but that's it. Yeah. You get a nice little Easter egg mid-credits, so don't forget to stick around for that. Like, after the first credits start to roll, stick around, because there's a mid-credits little nod to that.
Well, Maleficent got a second movie. Is this something that you'd like to see this character continue on with another rendition of some kind?
I would probably watch it. Emma Stone is so good. She is so good in this role. She actually has the laugh down. She has the character down. She's completely reinvented the character for herself. I would definitely watch another one. Like Maleficent, I never wanted to see another. I still haven't seen the sequel because I just didn't care enough. I would definitely watch another Cruella movie just because I think Craig Gillespie did a wonderful job with direction. Soundtrack's fantastic. Costume design is amazing, but mostly Emma Stone was that good. Like if you have ever doubted, why is there so much attention to Emma Stone? Watch Cruella and tell me you don't get it, because she specifically plays two completely different characters and does them masterfully. She evokes a classic villain, probably the most classic Disney villain, evokes that character while also completely making it her own in a way that I would say tops Glenn Close, because Glenn Close felt like an over-the-top recreation of the character, because she was playing the same character from the cartoon, where Emma Stone gets the opportunity to kind of start from the ground up. And I think just does a masterful job. That laugh is just so well timed.
Well, you better be careful, because it sounds like I have to call your girlfriend, Ms. Lawrence, and tell her that her best friend is stealing her man.
Do what? I don't understand that joke.
Well, Emma Stone and Jennifer Lawrence are best friends.
I didn't know that. That's my girl.
All right. Well, if $10 was the full price of admission, how much extra are you going to give to Disney to see this film?
I would give this one. Actually, I'll give you a peek. I'm giving both films the same score, $8, because I had a great time with both of these films for different reasons.
Because the movies are back.
Yeah, man. I had a great time. And I'm telling you, I did not want to see this. I had no interest. I just don't care about Disney original villains. I barely care about the cartoon itself. So the idea that you could make Cruella a really great movie is just beyond to me. Oh, and also I want to address, because on the internets, somebody ran a clip of dogs attacking a character and kind of ran with that, and basically just said how cheap and lazy that is, and without any context of what happens in the actual movie. Watch the freaking movie before you start jumping on that or piling on that. It makes sense in the context of the movie. It actually makes complete sense, and it's not what you think. It's not what you think. These are trained animals. It's not what you think. So just relax, internet. My God.
Yeah. The only time cherry picking is good is when it's to actually eat cherries.
Now I'm hungry. Thanks for that.
You betcha.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for Cruella. Now we're going to move into A Quiet Place 2. And like I said earlier, we are going to start with some spoiler-free comments, and then we're going to move into our spoilers. So the first 5 minutes will probably be spoiler-free. Following the events at home, the Abbott family now face the terrors of the outside world. Forced to venture into the unknown, they realize the creatures they hunt by sound are not the only threats lurking beyond the sand path. Very relatable to Walking Dead in some respects. And I will tell you, we do get a beginning look. We get a day one to kick off the film to kind of show you what happens in terms of the monsters and their effect on the earth. So first, spoiler free, what did you think of this film overall? And like you said, Troy, we both saw the first one together, and I remember that experience. And just to recap it for people that don't know, we went to the theater. Everybody was perfectly quiet. It was the best sound. You could hear a pin drop. We didn't even want to eat popcorn, which is something I just don't do. Like if there's popcorn near me, I will eat the other people's popcorn. I don't care. I'm eating popcorn. And I didn't want to, because I just was absorbed in that movie. Did you feel similarly here?
Yeah, if I had probably gone Thursday night, I totally would have think that same experience would have happened. I'm actually kind of bummed we didn't go see this one together, to be honest.
Yeah, me too.
Because I thought that would have been fun. On the onset, when this got announced, the first thing I thought was man, why you got to go ruin a good thing? It was so perfect, so buttoned up. The explanation of how you can actually kill these creatures was given. What more could they do with this franchise? And especially without John Krasinski being in the film, because he's, not long for the world in the first one. And if you haven't seen the first one, too bad for you. But coming into this, I was just really excited to see what John Krasinski was able to do again with his directing ability, with his attention to sound detail, with directing his wife. I mean, it's always got to be a hard challenge. So I loved sitting down and just from the jump, just getting immersed in the environment again. And then to get that day one experience to understand like what the hell is going on. Because when he first pulls up just to open the movie in his truck and goes into the store, it already feels like you're not on day one. It feels like it's already like mid crisis because there's nobody out in the streets and it's empty and it's like what's going on? Like, where am I? Why is he here? Is this a dream sequence? Like, what's going on here? And then just from that point forward, you just get immersed into the town, the people. We get introduced to his best friend and his family. I just think all around this did a really great job of setting up what the second installment was going to be so that you could just go on a completely new ride. And I had like no complaints like that. From that point forward, I was sucked in. And then, man, there's something that happens in that first 5 minutes that you just, I think I literally pissed my pants. I jumped so high in my seat.
And one thing that I will say at the beginning that's a beautiful touch, and also I think a nod to John Krasinski as a director, that he really has a knack for horror. Even though I believe he didn't originally ever want to make a horror movie or know how to make a horror movie, he has blossomed into a great horror director. He plays off our expectations in that first 5 minutes. I'm sure you noticed that, where he's playing with sounds. He's amplifying apples being bitten. He's grabbing vegetables and putting them in a plastic bag. Like all these little sounds now are kind of scaring us because we're like, oh, when's the monster going to show up? What the hell are you doing? Why are you being so loud? Because this is before the aliens get there. You know what I mean? So it's an interesting dynamic that he took to start the film is by completely playing with our expectations from the previous film. And that I thought was extremely brilliant. That was a really sweet touch in terms of filmmaking. Yeah. And many people would have overdone that or not done it at all. And he did it really the right amount. He didn't overplay it. He just kind of let it happen organically.
I think there's also a great statement that goes along with his use of the camera and just visual lines and perspectives. Because including that opening sequence again in that day one journey, I mean, just the way he uses like the dogs. Because anytime you see a dog, the dog's like, well, the dog's going to, bark first at whatever's coming around the corner. And you see a couple of dogs in this opening sequence and just looking at the way they're sitting, the direction, the height and fur on them. Like there's just things about the animals that just put you on edge to know like something is coming and you don't know what.
Or when.
And then when you finally see what that something is, I mean, again, the sound at this baseball game that's in the first 2-3 minutes of the movie. I mean, it's just fantastic on how they play that off and how they're able to communicate with each other across the diamond. And then, of course, what you see across the sky as it flows through, just that sound amplification of that event was just amazing.
Yeah, and as a film overall, I really admired that they do similar things like a sequel would. Like they give you the stuff you want, and they also kind of take our characters on different journeys. And they evolve. Especially the children. The children really evolve as the movie plays out. I'll get into that when we get into spoilers. I don't want to ruin that for anyone who just wants to know if the movie's any good. But I will say, yeah, it's not as good as the first one, but it's damn close. Like it's closer than most sequels ever get. It breaks the law of what sequels normally do. Because normally it's, a drastic drop. But man, I was on pins and needles the whole time. Did you feel like this was a worthy sequel or just a cash in then? That kind of leads to that question.
It's a weird question this time around because I think it's both. I think it was made as a cash in originally, and then they actually did a really good job. I mean, they defied the sequel always sucks mantra. This was a completely wholly owned new story, new way to deal with the creatures, whatever we're going to call them. I don't even know if they're aliens. They could just be from planet Earth, and you don't even know. Assuming not, based on what happens in the opening sequence of the day one retrospective you get as the movie opens. But it was just like, man, like, how are they doing this again? And how do I feel so like trapped by this lack of sound and just invested in the characters? I mean, for a while you thought maybe Emily Blunt's character was going to be like this Rambo act, coming out and scorched earth, save my family is kind of how you thought that the trailer was going to go off.
Yeah.
And then to be pleasantly surprised that that's not the case. Like it is truly the two kids that are really the shining stars of this feature film, and how the one kid specifically, is she's like going out there and just forging her own path, yeah, and, for those that haven't seen the first movie, right? She's deaf and she has an ocular implant and trying to use that in order to communicate in this world, which becomes obviously the device that obviously helps out everybody else. But it's just like her presence on screen for being only 18 years old and even younger when she did the first movie originally. I mean, just captivating. You're just like, wow. Like you thought you were watching a, 40, 50-year-old actress who's been doing the business forever. Just the way there's a scene where she reaches out and she grabs in Murphy's face and just grabs it and says, remember, enunciate, look at me. And just the way she moved his head, it was just so graceful. And it was like, man, like, did they just nail like deaf people and disabilities? It's really, really, really well done. And it's a great, I don't call it a horror movie, to be honest. I don't find it to be horror. I find it to be action jump scare, because horror is like, The Conjuring or something like that, where it's like a cult and devil in my brain. I just think it's a really great action movie that just, occasionally makes you wet yourself.
I couldn't agree more on all counts, actually. But Reagan in particular, Millicent Simmons, is just, she ends up being the star of the movie. As much as Emily Blunt's on the cover and on the poster and everything else, Millicent Simmons is the star of this movie, in my opinion. I really think she commands the film and really elevates the film. Not that Emily Blunt is, I think, one of our best actresses working today. I don't
for sure
want to take away from her anyway, but I was so amazed with the character's journey and what they did with her, and how they never, in a movie in a world that's completely all about sound. It's about the sound and lack of sound, and a deaf person in this world, by definition, it would be a weakness, right? Here, it's completely turned into a strength in many respects. And I admire that, because it's not often you see that for a film to take someone with a quote unquote disability and turn it around into a strength. And I love that about the movie. And I love how she plays that. She really, really does wonders with that. And her rapport with Cillian Murphy is just spot on. And really, I thought initially Cillian Murphy's character of Emmett would be a father figure to replace Lee from the first film, and it's just not the case. There's more depth there, which we'll talk about in the spoilers. But I just loved her character completely through and through. I loved her character. Now we're going to go into spoilers, but I want to get our scores out of the way for people that just wanted to know the spoiler-free stuff. So $10 full price admission. I already said mine was 8. What is your score?
I would say it's a solid 8 as well.
Okay. Now, spoilers are allowed if you haven't seen A Quiet Place 2, or you don't want any spoilers, you don't want to go through those spoilers, then now is the time to stop the podcast. But we're heading into it. So as of right now, you're on your own. Emmett is almost a replacement for Lee, like we talked about. So John Krasinski, his character's completely dead. There was no chance he was coming back. I kind of worried a little bit when you see him in the trailer. Are they going to do something where Lee comes back, where he wasn't completely mauled and killed, like somehow he survived barely, but thankfully that didn't happen. Cillian Murphy instead manages to be our new male lead. And I gotta say, this is the beauty of Cillian Murphy as an actor. Because up until probably the hour mark, and the movie's only like 90 minutes long, 97 minutes long, up until about the hour mark, I still questioned his allegiance because of how he played the role. You as well?
Yeah, I think so. The one thing that I was really struggling with this movie was the whole concept of what is beyond the sand path? Who is out there? And he talks about the humans aren't actually human anymore, and they don't know how to behave, and they don't know how to operate. And we do get to see that in one particular sequence. I honestly thought like the 97-minute runtime is refreshing in a world where everything has to be over 2 hours. So I really love the fact that it was quick and clean and crisp, and boom, you got to the ending, and it was fantastic. At the same time, I kind of felt a little gypped, which is why this one falls just a little short from the first movie, because I was hoping for more of the adventure, like what groups were they going to run into? What factions were there going to be? Was this guy actually part of one of those factions, trying to figure out a way to kill the enemies themselves and rise to power? I thought that's kind of where the movie was going initially. And then it obviously redirects back to what the ultimate plan is, which is to get to this radio tower across the sea. And I think the one thing that initially I felt that way about Killian, but once they knew once you saw who it was, once the face mask was revealed inside the boiler, I was like, oh no, he's going to be on their side because he's the old friend that we met in the initial opening sequence of day one. So you don't
really, you didn't think when she wakes up and her hearing aid's out and he's gone or what ocular implant is gone, is you didn't think, that son of a bitch, he just went to get her so he could get that device so he can survive on his own. That's what I mean, that played because of how, I don't know, enigmatic he played his character, how mysterious and ominous he played the character of Emmett, because of how broken he was, how far down he'd gone. I mean, I really saw that as a possibility. You didn't think so? You're like, no, he's coming back.
No, it's probably because I read an interview that John did before the movie came out back in 1920 when they were filming it, and how he wanted to make Reagan the lead for this particular film. And because of that, I'm like, because she just sat down and sat there, I figured, oh no, he's going to come back because he's like the new dad figure. If it gone on maybe like another 5 to 10 minutes, like she had to like go through the woods and then she gets kidnapped by a bunch of men or something, then I probably would have thought more like that. But because she just sat right there and he came back so quickly, I didn't think I had enough time for that to kind of settle in at all.
Okay. So were you happy with his addition? Because I do think, unlike Lee, where Lee was always the strong, powerful leader type in the movie, right? And Reagan obviously has adopted.
I think it's expected though, because it's his family, right? It's if you do anything as a dad, you're a dad. I'm a dad. Mm-hmm. You do anything for your family. So I mean, of course he's going to be a strong leader in this situation because he's protecting his family,
right? But I'm saying, Cillian Murphy is the other end of that. He's the guy who couldn't protect his family. All of his family is dead because he couldn't live up to Lee, which is, I mean, he alludes to several times that he's not him. He can't do what he did. He's not as good, which turns out it's just different circumstances. He just was less lucky than Lee was. Lee had a better set of circumstances because when you see Emmett come face to face with a group of whisperers or whatever the hell they're called, basically Walking Dead cast-offs.
Yeah, others.
Others. He does exactly what needs to be done and saves Reagan's life and does it in stupendous fashion. Like, that's a great sequence. I was like, how them Duke boys going to get out of this one? And he did it really wonderfully in a way that made me absolutely love his character that I hadn't loved to that point. I just liked.
And more importantly, they do a really great job in the first movie of like Chekhov's gun, where you can totally like, oh, that's going to come up again later in the film. That's going to come up later in the film. Mm-hmm. They were teaching sign language at the baseball game at the opening sequence, and he asks like, how do you say the word dive?
Dive, yeah.
And then I didn't anticipate that coming back in the movie. So when it came back up in the movie later, I was like, oh my God, that's brilliant. Like the gun, when they put the gun down and he goes into the boiler room and then comes back out and the gun is there. Like I called that one for sure.
Sure.
But the dive one, I totally did not expect to see that come back up. And in a situation where they needed it the most.
So well done. So are you glad that they added him, or would you rather have Reagan was just on her own for this journey?
No, I liked it because it gave a sense of, it's like a transition period. Like I'd really love to see a third movie to see what happens next. Now that they have this idea and this concept and the radio station tower, and we find out that the monsters can't swim, or aliens, or whatever you want to call them, the creatures. I think this is the transition period of like, hey, I lost my dad. Like, how do I operate in this world without a father, but yet still have someone pushing me forward, someone driving me to be a better person? And I think that Emmett's character really does that for Reagan in this film, so that the third movie, Reagan can literally jump out and be on her own. She is the heroine, and I think we focus completely on her story and just leave mom and brother and baby behind.
Oh wow, you just want to cast Emily Blunt to the wind.
Well, I mean, maybe she comes like there's a way to like rope her back into the story, but it's like as long as the baby continues to be there, that's still going to drive me crazy because it's like, all right, we got to go to another pharmacy, get another oxygen tank. It's like.
Yeah, just name that kid Bait is what I keep saying. I'm like, just call that kid Bait, because every time that kid, although she came up with a pretty brilliant way to solve that solution by insulating that box and put the oxygen in there. That was pretty freaking genius, you got to admit.
But at the same time, it was like, in the first movie, it's genius. In the second movie, it's like, we're running away from the monsters, carrying this giant box. Just drop the thing.
Sometimes you just need to know that kid's not going to make it. Kid's going to have a rough go of it. You know, it's a long way to go with a baby. Oh, that's cruel, but funny. But I was glad Cillian Murphy ended up being, even though he is kind of a Lee replacement in many respects, who relearns what it takes to be Lee in some aspects. I like that Reagan kind of brought him out of his depression or out of his sorrow and reminded him of the man he used to be, which is nice.
Which is the hope of the movie, right? It's Reagan's the one that figured out how to actually defeat these enemies and then take it to a bigger scale by heading to the radio station. So she is not only the hope for Emmett's character, but she's also the hope for humanity in this case. So I love the way that you're tying the two stories together, which brings us to the fact that this movie is actually two movies in one, and it's done extremely well going between the two plot lines.
Yeah, well, that brings us to, splitting the family up for different journeys. Why do you love that so much?
I think it goes back to John. I'm just fascinated by the man at this point. That
John
he's able
Krasinski?
he's able to, write as well as he did, the way he directed this thing, and the fact that he's like, oh, he's just Jim from The Office. Because, man, like the sequences when they're going back and forth between Emily Blunt's situation, the mom and the son and the baby, they're trapped in this like industrial warehouse type of environment. There's like a boiler in the basement, and they use the boiler to basically hide, to isolate sound. But of course, there's no air inside of a boiler. So there's a whole gimmick that plays with that. You have that sequence going on while then Emmett and Reagan are actually transversing across the greater New York area to get to some boats in order to go to an island where there is a radio tower. And as they're flipping back and forth between the stories, there's sequences where, like, if someone was crawling on the ground on a dock, let's say, and then they switch over to the other family and someone's crawling on the ground through the boiler. So it's like they're doing the exact same activity in both stories at the same time. So when they intercut between the two, it's just so flawless. It's like every single moment is happening at the same time. It's almost like the brother and sister are channeling each other across the spectrum as if they were almost twins in that regard.
Yeah, and I think obviously Reagan has a better arc than I think Marcus does, who's played by Noah Jupe, because his is more of, I'm kind of a big baby now I have to elevate and I have to grow into be this young man, who, I stepped into a bear trap, because I freaked out, all these things that happen, and he has to evolve.
Well, I think he freaked out because he stepped in the bear trap. They were running from the creature and he just happened to hit a bear trap.
Right, but he was kind of freaking out before that. So he's, and then of course he's crying and screaming, and then he's trying to be this young man, but he really evolves into this real young man who can protect his family by the end, which, I love that dynamic. I really, really love that dynamic, that both of the kids are center stage in this movie. And the whole time you're like, when's Emily Blunt going to do the big badass thing? And she does do big bad. She still gets her moment. Don't get me wrong.
That was a pretty awesome moment.
Yeah, it's a pretty freaking awesome moment. But in the same token, he protects his brother. Is it brother or sister? I don't really know what.
I forgot what the baby's gender is, to be quite honest.
Okay, well, he protects Bate. He really protects Bate from, even though Bate is the whole reason that this kid's in danger. But he does a wonderful job protecting the baby and doing what he could to ensure the baby survived, and even though mom just kind of up and left him without really leaving a whole lot of clear instructions because she trusted in him. And for the most part, he did right. Although, except for he couldn't remember to put the towel on the door. Dumbass. But that's a typical young kid. Like all the mistakes he makes are typical young person mistakes. Like none of that do I say, wow, what an idiot kid. It's more like, yeah, that's what a kid would do. Like a kid wouldn't think about that because he shouldn't have to at his age. But ultimately he does, and he has to learn how to use a gun. He has to learn how to defend his family. And Reagan's over here having to figure out how to save the world, and she put that together because she heard Beyond the Sea. All of those things coming together, and they end, and they don't reconnect at the end. So we don't get that story where they all reunite and we're all happy and stuff. It's like, no, each of the kids, their journey ends, the movie ends. And I thought that was that was kind of a bold choice, and I loved it.
Yeah, because it definitely leaves it open to have more story in this universe for sure.
Sure. I mean, the next movie might be them trying to come back together, or maybe they'll go more on a global scale. And I also really admired how Krasinski took the world, which was a very, very small insular world, the first movie, right? Would you agree? I mean, it's very insulated.
Yeah, it's the farm,
tiny.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in this movie, really expanded it. You see different kinds of people. You know, you see people on the island. You see people on the dock, you know, different kinds of people that have gone through different kinds of things. And he really evolved the world building to kind of show how the greater impact on the world has been, or at least in this large region. And I think if they did a third movie, they could easily expand that to more of a global scale. I don't know how you do it, but they could expand it to a global. Reagan's trying to get the word out to the world or something. And I love that because it's a very subtle world building. And usually in a sequel, it's jammed in there. They do some crazy things to try to make it work. And especially in a horror sequel. I mean, just think of Ring 2, Grudge 2. Think of all these movies that had sequels, and none of them even came close to the first one. This one comes very, very close.
Yeah, it's almost like it's a perfect continuation that it could have been part of the original movie, to be quite honest.
Sure.
Like you could have had a 3-hour epic in like a Lord of the Rings style and had these just both be one movie all combined.
I think they would play very well as one movie, for sure. So what did you think about learning that the aliens or monsters, whatever, the monsters couldn't swim, as well as there was an entire island of survivors this whole time?
Yeah, the island of survivors thing was actually more interesting than they couldn't swim factor, because obviously they're like, well, where are they going to go?
True.
I don't know if this would be considered spoilery, but we're in spoilery. But if you're a video game player, The Last of Us 2, this very much had a Last of Us 2 kind of connotation to it, where there's a...
Well, don't spoil that for me because I'm playing it right now.
Yeah. There's an island of people, outside of Seattle. I mean, and obviously these creatures obviously sound very much like the clickers from the Last of Us series games. They look the same when their heads open up and they're vulnerable. And I love that concept that there's a community of people who are living their own completely blissful existence because they feel like they're safe. And when you have creatures, no one's really safe. And I think that the whole concept of, like, I never thought the boat was going to float across the ocean to the island and then the creature was going to show up. That was a very juicy, like, oh my God, yes, this is awesome.
And it works.
Kind of moment.
It works.
It totally works. And it's totally believable.
Because people, when I was walking out of the theater, somebody was like, well, that's just ridiculous, that boat landed there. I'm like, it wasn't that far, man. I mean, it was literally in the current, it was right outside the bay. So it made total sense that the current would carry it there. It really did.
For sure. Yeah. And I think that just sets up a really interesting sequence for the run for the radio tower on the island. I think that was all really, the vehicle sequences in this movie were fascinatingly and well done. The whole day one sequence where she's driving down the street and then backing up from the bus and just the sequence on the island to get to the radio tower. I thought all of that was just, the vehicle work was stellar. So I don't know like who the stunt coordinators were for this movie, but man, great job. Really great job. I felt intense, and I literally felt like I was sitting in a like first person or even a third person point of view video game watching those vehicle sequences happen.
Yeah, I was really riveted, especially that final one where they're just racing across the island and they're basically
the convertible sequence.
Yeah, they're just trying to bring that thing closer and closer to the radio tower. That was a fun sequence. It really was.
Because you kind of knew what was going to happen, but they play off your emotions because as he's shifting the car again, he amplifies the noise of the engine and the shifting. So like you can't see when the creature actually going to catch up to them. And you're just like, oh my God, it's like when is it going to happen? I know it's coming. And then it doesn't come. And then, well,
part of me just for a second, was like, man, this is really on you guys. You kind of brought this guy to the island. They were nice and comfortable and having a great time. They're having a nice fire and relaxing. They're having a wonderful time. And you guys bring a monster straight to their front door. And kind of it did, but it's also on them because they were playing Beyond the Sea. So they were luring people there. So it's really on them too. They should have just kept it to themselves. So what did you think in terms of that? Did you feel like these people should have just let it go and just not broadcast to the world that they were here?
No, I mean, if you think about what humanity is all about and just the connection of people and trying to do right in the world, I mean, I thought again, John did a great job, like literally an American flag planted there in the center saying like, hey, this is like normal life. This is what's left of the United States at this point. Everybody should come here. I thought it was a brilliant move just to say like that it's a communication message and not just a song playing. I thought that was a brilliant way to say, hey, we are here, we are surviving, and if you need a safe place to go, this is where you come. But at the same time, could that become an army in a future movie? I think it was really great and really well done. All
right. So did you have any issues with the film, story, production, otherwise, anything?
My only issue was that it was I really love the sequences in the woods from the first movie, like when they find that old guy and then the old guy screams and then the family runs away. Mm-hmm. Like those, like running into random people. I thought there would be more journey down the path type experiences, because like they stand on that bridge over the bay and they look towards the boats, and you're like, man, it's going to take a while to walk there. It's pretty, I mean, it's close, but it's not like super close, especially in where you have to tiptoe down the path the entire time, so you don't like crunch the leaves and stuff. So I was really excited for that journey to get there. I mean, I was fine with the boat, like literally like cut to black and it goes across the sea and then like, boom, it lands on the beach. Like we don't need to watch them float on the water for half an hour. But the walking in the woods to get to the boats, I thought there would be a lot more there, encountering these crazy people that exist out there. I thought there'd be a lot more of that. And I think that'd probably be my only disappointment of the movie, is I just wanted to see more of Emmett and Reagan working together to solve those problems. I think that would have been, which would have made the inevitable final problem like that much sweeter, because now they've actually learned how to work together and learned how to communicate together. I feel like that was maybe shortchanged just a little bit, because he doesn't know sign language. He doesn't know how to communicate with her.
Right. So that could have been more of a building challenge for them to overcome.
For sure.
Yeah. I can see that. This was, I mean, it's funny because you and I were talking before this, and you said this is one of the rare movies. And if you don't know Troy is famous for saying the movie was 20 minutes too long. That's like his thing for almost every movie. It's 20 minutes too long. So when you said, for the first time in a long time, I think I could have used another 20 minutes, I was actually surprised and on board. But in the same token, I like how lean this movie is. I like how it flows. I think it just start to finish. I mean, you're invigorated, you're involved, you're taken aback by a lot of it. And so I think by fleshing it out too much, they kind of take away from some of that. So I like how they did it, but I get what you're saying. I would have liked to have seen at least another scene of that where they bumped into some random and got a little bit of a story of the world outside of the world we know already.
Yeah,
or
just a simple,
Emily Blunt running into one. That would have been fine.
Exactly. Because she went out on her own. So, I mean, that was the big thing. Like, she was still in the sand path and the normal places that they went in the first movie, going back to the gravesite, going back to the pharmacy. But yeah, at this point, these people could have invaded because of what had happened at the farm. It obviously throws up a signals, sends out oh, hey, there's people here. We need to go raid them kind of thing. Like, that would have been cool to see them come in and raid Emily Blunt at the same time. Like you were saying, like, just maybe we meet the dock people in the woods, and as they're trying to run away from the dock people, and then they get trapped at the docks as kind of the final encounter. Just could have been a little bit more build up with that community of crazy hobos.
Crazy hobos. That's their gang name. The Crazy Hobos. And I didn't understand why Emily Blunt, why her character, she runs out to the pharmacy. She's doing this move, which is, great, needed to be done because the kid's going to have a horrible leg infection if he doesn't get meds. That's ultimately that.
And the oxygen tank is running low for the bait. Yeah,
both things. So why Evelyn doesn't stop by a shoe store and get these kids some shoes? Like, that's probably the only other thing. I'm like, I get you go barefoot. It's a little quieter. It's not that much quieter because Emmett's been living out here with shoes on, boots on, and he's fine. So maybe everybody could get some shoes.
Yeah, that was an interesting twist when you actually see them walk towards the bridge with the traffic jam of cars, and you see his boots compared to her bare feet, and I'm just like, really? We didn't need the sand the whole time? This kind of went through my head.
I was like, obviously the shoes aren't making that much of a difference. Lee, you got that one wrong. You just did. It's nice. And I really like the dynamic of how both parents kept their kids alive. It wasn't just, because that's the one thing I did like about the movie is that Lee wasn't just the sole protector. I mean, Evelyn was just as capable, even if she's not a Rambo style like you expected in this movie. She's still very capable of protecting her family. Don't mess with Mother Bear. She protects her cubs, and she did in this movie as much as she could, for sure.
And I love how it just starts right from where it left off.
Oh, I love that.
If they do it,
I loved it.
Yeah. It was so like, wow, we're jumping right back in. Okay. This is great. And so I mean, I would literally say Quiet Place 3, family reunited. Like, how do they get back together?
Absolutely loved how smart she was before they left. I really thought it was going to be one of those things where they just packed up and left, and she really put a lot of thought into, I'm going to get the oxygen tank for the baby. I'm going to get the box. I'm going to insulate the box. You know, we have to be ready to leave. We can't just up and go. We have to be prepared. And I thought that was a nice touch.
Oh my God, the whole time she was in the water, I was like, please, dear God, don't let there be a creature down here. Please don't let there be a creature down here.
Oh, that's one of the best things about the movie is like he plays with that so well because he knows we're so worried about it from the previous movie that he gives us many opportunities to be worried where we end up, we shouldn't have to be. You know, we didn't have to be. And I thought that was good.
It's really, really good.
So what
really
characters, I think we kind of already talked about them, but did anybody else stand out for you?
Oh, no. Reagan, she steals the show by far. And I love the sequence when they go into the DJ booth at the radio station and just her gracefulness. Like she had to have taken ballet or gymnastics or something or maybe it was a stunt double that was doing it, but just her foot and all the stuff that she could step on the way down and just perfectly navigating that to find the right spot to stand. The balance that whoever that was when they shot that did is just impeccable in order to make that happen. And I don't know how many takes that took them to make that happen, but it was just like, I was like, wow, this is like ballet right here.
Oh, and you're just waiting for a moment similar into the first movie where you've got the needle to the foot, right? You're just like waiting for that.
Waiting for it the entire time. Oh, and then, because then she like goes back downstairs to go get the map. And then you're like, the minute she like walked down the stairs, I was like, oh my God, the nail. It like just literally shouted it out. I was like, watch out for the nail. Again. Watch out for the nail again. And then she just misses it just gently, which is another great, like that Chekhov's gun obviously comes up with the radio station because then she doesn't step on anything at the radio station and closes that file cabinet drawer. So it's like just that set up she is that graceful that she missed the nail. Therefore, she'll be that graceful later on. So it's just so well done. John is just flabbergasting me beyond belief at this point.
Super talented and seems like a genuinely nice guy.
Totally nice.
He went round and round to movie theaters around the country just to welcome people back to the theater because he was trying to amp up their experience. And I thought, oh, that's a nice touch.
Totally.
So the ultimate question, do you want more? Do you want a third movie? Do you think it should stop at a third movie? Do you want 5 movies? Like, what do you want?
Well, Aaron knows this about me. I was big into the Cloverfield scene. Mm-hmm. Like, I love 10 Cloverfield Lane especially was really, really, really well done because it wasn't about the creatures. It was about the people. I didn't necessarily like the shaky cam found footage of the first Cloverfield movie, but I like the story and the concept. So I'm like, man, when is this going to tie into Cloverfield? I actually think I should say, when is Cloverfield going to tie into A Quiet Place? Because this is way well done, and I could watch 9 movies of this, even when they go to space and meet up with the rest of the crew from Fast and the Furious.
To go chase them down? To go chase down these monsters? And by the way, I'm pretty sure they are aliens, by the way, because, I mean, you see the meteor coming in at the beginning. I think they alluded to it in the first
or whatever
movie,
it is. Yeah. I haven't said they were aliens in the movie, so it's like we're interpreting that they're aliens, but...
I know. You like to overthink things. You're like, well, but maybe that was just a random meteor, and these are just, the meteor woke them up from under the ground, or something like that.
It's very possible. Sure. Crashed in the ocean and then opened up some prehistoric primal thing, or...
And they're hanging out with the Pacific Rim monsters and the kaiju?
Totally.
Sure.
Kaiju all the way.
So I want more, and I'll be honest, I think I want one more movie with the Abbott family, kind of conclude their storyline and how Reagan gets the word out to everybody else about how these implants will help save you in many respects, because for whatever reason, it's the frequency and it's the distortion and like that really gets to the hyper sensitive sound or hearing of these creatures. I think conclude this chapter. And then if you want to spin it off and go into different worlds and different families, that would be cool. And maybe Reagan can kind of be like someone who crosses paths along the way, or something like that. Like she's like Kane in Kung Fu. She just travels the earth, getting into her own adventures, trying to save the planet because that's who she is. And I think that could be cool.
No, I think a third movie, call it a trilogy, button it up, I think would be perfect.
All right.
Definitely a third. There definitely needs to be a third movie. There has to be. Like, I just wanted so much more when I came out of I'm like, God, I want to see that again.
And were you surprised by how big this movie is? And basically, we're coming out of a pandemic. Yes, things are starting to open up, but there's still capacity limits in a theater. So having a $50 million weekend, actually $60 million when you factor in the holiday, I mean, having a monster weekend like that is kind of a surprise. We haven't really had one. Godzilla vs. Kong is the best we had, and that was $30 million. And that was a huge freaking movie. So were you surprised
didn't
by
even
that?
come close last year.
Right. No.
Yeah, no. I mean, I guess because of the pandemic, I don't think box office is the way to measure these things anymore. I think it's just a matter of, like, in the case of day and date streaming, HBO Max, Disney Plus with the Premier Access, to see the theaters do 60 million this weekend in the States with this movie, it just shows you that there is still a place for movie theaters. And there are definitely movies that need to be seen on the big screen. Cruella, obviously I could probably watch that at home, but this was and I was pissed. Let me tell you, I was super pissed off because I tend to prefer the Dolby Cinema AMC experience over IMAX. Mm-hmm. I think the sound is better. I think the picture is on equal, if not maybe a little bit better in the Dolby AMC Prime experience. They put Cruella in that theater and they put Quiet Place in IMAX. And I was just like, man, the IMAX theater doesn't have the comfy chairs. It doesn't have the recliners. Like, why are you making me sit in this theater? The IMAX presentation was fine. The sound was fantastic, obviously, in IMAX. I think it would have been better in AMC Prime. So I was a little bit bummed. But
I will tell you, it was one of those things where, hey, in my mind, I could justify the $30 for Cruella for people at home. Because, I mean, you got a family
you got a family of 4.
Yeah, or
it's
4
cheaper.
or whatever. That adds up. You know what I mean? I get it. It saves you a lot of money. I completely understand. On the same token, now that I saw it in a theater and that soundtrack is so fantastic, the costume design is just like a beauty to behold. I totally recommend seeing that one in the theater. I mean, if you can. I mean, obviously it's expensive, but if you can. Okay, well, I think that's going to do it for this conversation, though. I'm really excited that movies are back, baby. John Krasinski just saved movie theaters, even though I think a lot of that hyperbole about movie theaters are dead, like you just said, was way overblown.
For sure. Yeah, and I can't wait to go back. And honestly, like, I paid $18 for my Quiet Place ticket alone for myself.
Did you really?
I mean, that's not far off from, $30 for the Disney movie.
Damn, son.
Well, it was an AMC and it was prime time and it was IMAX. So, and I haven't got my A-list membership started back up yet. So I'm waiting for June. I think maybe I'll wait till July to start that back up again when it was supposed to start up automatically.
We've got a lot of movies coming.
We sure do. Can't wait.
All right. So we've already talked about our scores. We both said $8. Troy, where can people find you?
You can find me talking about the Blacklist over at theblacklistexposed.com. We were renewed for season 9. So I'm sure we'll be back with the podcast. We're wrapping up actually season 8, only 3 episodes to go this season. We're going into June just a little bit because of obviously pandemic times, but you can check that all out at theblacklistexposed.com. Also with this joker over here.
You can share your thoughts on this episode or anything else in our Facebook group or on Twitter at @BuyPopcorn. I want to mention the Facebook group is The Hollywood Outsider. It's a closed group, so you got to look for it. And we're on our site, thehollywoodoutsider.com. And you can always rate and subscribe on your preferred podcast app. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks, Troy, for being here. Thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Always glad to go to the movies in the theater and be able to share in the experiences with all of you. So thanks so much for listening, and go see both movies.
And remember, when you do, the next time you go to see a movie in a theater, because they're open again all week long, buy popcorn.
But eat it quietly.
Yeah, shut the up and eat your popcorn quietly. You're so loud, Bob. Why are you so loud?